According, Fräulein, I may not be the man I was when the captain took me prisoner in 1945, but I am.
You know this name?
Arnim Zola was a German scientist who worked for the Red Scare. He's been dead for years.
First correction, I am Swiss. Second, look around you. I have never been more alive. In 1972, I received a terminal diagnosis. Science could not save my body. My mind, however, that was worth saving. On 200,000 feet of data banks, you are standing in my brain.
Neil is a musician, an artist, and a cyborg. That's an antenna surgically implanted in his skull.
That's actually attached to you, right?
Yeah, that's an antenna, a human antenna implant.
He identifies as a cyborg.
It's feeling that you're not using technology and that you're not wearing technology. It's feeling that you are technology.
By definition, a cyborg is a person whose human skills are enhanced by technology. As devices increasingly take over our lives, some people are actually putting technology into their bodies. Neil, who's colorblind, says his antenna allows him to hear color.
So this is very blue, blue.
It converts the frequencies from different colors into the frequencies for different sounds.
Why, in the first place, did you decide to attach this to yourself?
I didn't want to wear technology. I wanted this to be an integral part of me, so that's how I kept developing it until I found a doctor that actually drilled my head and made it implanted.
How did you find a doctor who agreed to put that in your head?
That was very complex, because there's bioethical committees that don't really agree with the union between humans and technology. So in the end, I did find one, and then he did it anonymously, so he did the implant.
His partner, Moon, is also a self-described cyborg. She wears an antenna that she says vibrates every time there's an earthquake.
I'm a choreographer, and I want to perceive movement in the deeper way I can. If I was alone in the planet, what movement would I be able to feel? Then I realized there was earthquakes.
And one particular cyborg sees business opportunity in embeddable technology. Emil Grafstra sells chips people can implant inside their bodies.
I think we've sold probably around 2,000 to 3,000 implants across all the different types.
Emil has one in each hand and uses it to scan into his car, home, and personal safe.
Essentially what I've done is taken an RFID access card and moved it from a pants pocket to a skin pocket.
It sounds futuristic, but Neil envisions a world where implantable tech and surgical add-ons could give people superhuman abilities.
We'll meet someone and we'll see that maybe they have a new body part, and then the question is what sense you have. So that will be a question that we'll ask people.
Lori Siegel, CNN Money, New York.
This man is Rob Spence, and he makes films. No, literally, his body makes films. After a shooting accident when he was 9, Rob had to have his eyes surgically removed. But after joking with friends about having a robotic cyborg one installed instead, documentary maker Rob actually went and did it.
Pretty much anyone who loses an eye will make a joke, at least. I should get a camera put in there. It's not a wacky, out-of-this-world concept.
Years of hard work and research have left him with this, a tiny camera implanted in his eye socket, which transmits video wirelessly to screens, TVs, hard drives and cameras. And it's opened up a whole new perspective for him, even getting him offers of, unsurprisingly, secret camera work.
One very high-up news executive said, would I like to go to Iraq with my prosthetic eye and see what I could see there? Because sometimes when you have a giant camera, it's not such a great idea in a war zone.
I recently traveled around.
But instead, sci-fi fan Rob went around the world making a documentary on cyborgs alongside the makers of the computer game Deus Ex. That game features a cyborg from the future. Here's one from today.
This rather unassuming lab is perhaps going to be considered the place where one of the biggest breakthroughs in medical technology ever took place, because here, Professor Warwick, head of cyborg research, implanted a microchip into his own body and with his own thoughts controlled a robot. He is the only man in the world alive to have done it, and I'm about to meet him. Now, you are head of Project Cyborg. You were a little bit of a cyborg yourself, weren't you? Just explain what happened.
Okay. Well, what I had in my nervous system, this very, very small implant, there's actually 100 very small electrodes.
In that little thing?
In that little thing.
And it was, I can see, is that a scar?
This is the scar there from the operation. And what surgeons did was open up and hammer this into my nervous system, like putting an electric plug in a socket. That gave a direct electrical connection, and by wires we could either plug me in to a computer, literally my nervous system, or by radio send signals from my nervous system to and from the computer.
What was the purpose of it?
If somebody who's paralysed can't move their arm but their brain is still functioning, that those brain signals could be used to manipulate an artificial arm, possibly their own arm, but certainly an artificial arm, and then sensors from the artificial arm could be fed back so the person could actually feel what the artificial arm is feeling.
Which is why we have an artificial arm here.
This is one of the things that I did with the experiment. So if you like, I've got to show it just by pressing the button here. But as I moved my hand, my brain signals also, by means of the implant, went out to control the robot hand. On the one hand, we could do that just in the laboratory, so look at helping somebody who's lost their hand or who's paralysed. But I actually did it. I went to New York and via the internet. This hand has little sensors you can probably see in the fingertips, little black sensors there, which give an indication how much force the hand is applying. And the signals were sent back from these sensors into my nervous system, and my brain learned over 6 weeks to recognise the pulses. I think for me the most exciting bit was that the human brain is very plastic. It can take on new sensations. This, for me, feeling what a robot hand's feeling was a new thing. I wasn't born with it. So it was exciting that my brain, in a very short time, could adapt so that it understood the signals.
This is one of the early experiments in Project Cyborg. There are sonar sensors here, and it was originally connected to Professor Warwick's nervous system. It is not, I haven't offered to do that. It's connected to these vibrators, and it tells me how close things are. What I will do is actually make myself blind. I'll cover myself up so I can't see anything. I will now switch this on. Oh, there we are. And I'll put this on. Yeah, okay. Well, clearly, Rob is very close. So, Rob, if you see, Rob's gone away. So, Rob, if you come close, you're coming close. You're coming very close. You're very close. You're very close. Go away, go away. No, he's gone away. Oh, and he's coming closer again. So, but although this is vibrating in my hands, this was all going on in Professor Warwick's nervous system. He is certainly a braver man than me.
More than 1,000 U.S. service members have lost a limb in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars.
But many are actually returning to combat thanks to bionic legs and arms, and some are receiving training here in the Tri-State.
9 News anchor Brendan Keefe has more on these bionic soldiers and Marines. Brendan?
Carol and Clyde, we have finally reached the point where prosthetics aren't just a suitable replacement for a lost limb. They're actually stronger and have more stamina than the real thing. Yes, we're talking about true bionics, and you're about to meet the real $6 million man.
This is the latest weapon on the battlefield. It's not a robot, but a bionic leg attached to Sergeant Jordan Smith, U.S. Army.
It's kind of like I had my leg back when I got this one. We're going to start giving you power now. Wow, that's awesome.
Sergeant Smith and his bionic ankle have come to Tactical Defense Institute in Adams County. One of 5 amputees participating in a pilot program learning how to handle firearms using their bionic limbs.
Yeah, you're pretty decent. Good. Good.
It was a bullet that took Sergeant Smith's leg, fired by an Iraqi insurgent during an ambush in Baghdad. The names of his buddies who didn't survive are etched into one of his 3 remaining limbs. He was the lucky one.
It's rough. It's hard. I kind of, why me? Why did I live and they didn't? Why did I get hurt? I mean, 4 inches. The bullet would have missed me. Either way, 4 inches.
The infantryman has been using the I Walk Biome foot for about a year.
My good leg gets tired before my prosthetic leg. This one's got assistance. I mean, I'm trying to keep up with it.
That's because it is truly bionic. A piston replaces the calf muscle and Achilles tendon. And with 6 microcomputers on board, it even does the thinking for the lower leg.
This seems to go beyond what the manufacturers are even claiming it'll do.
Sam Santarita owns SRT Prosthetics, which fits amputees with several kinds of artificial limbs.
Perfect. There you go. Now we just need to reload.
Like the bionic knee, but the Biome ankle is a game changer.
It's the first product I've seen in 25 years that actually mimics what the human body is doing, and in some ways is superior in strength to the power that's in the human ankle.
You heard right. It's stronger than the human leg it replaces. Strong enough to send this soldier back into combat. Sergeant Smith says it's as simple as reloading.
It's a battery, it doesn't get tired. It dies, swap them out. 2 seconds, you're going right back at it.
On my other legs, I walk a little bit slower. Now that I have this thing, I find my right leg trying to keep up with it.
Retired Marine Rob Warner lost his leg in a motorcycle crash between deployments. His unit went to Afghanistan without him, and many did not come home.
It felt horrible. Those are my brothers.
Warner chose retirement. But more and more military amputees are staying on active duty and returning to the battle. A generation ago, nearly 98% of amputee warriors would leave the military. Now the Army says 1 out of 5 single amputation soldiers returns to full duty.
Everything was left up to me. What do you want to do? That was the big question. What do you feel comfortable doing? Do you want to stay active duty? Do you want to retire? And I chose to stay in.
That's why the Defense Department and Veterans Administration funded development of the bionic ankle and other advanced prosthetics. Imagine the enemy seeing this entering the room. But now civilian amputees are also benefiting from this military technology.
Go. Now you're stable.
We are probably going to see people that are performing at a higher level than able-bodied people. We are probably going to see people that are performing at a higher level than able-bodied people. We are probably going to see people that are performing at a higher level than able-bodied people.
Well, we know Superman had his cape, Tonight, Dave Malkoff shows us what crime fighters of the future might have up their sleeve.
A few months back, a big prison riot broke out behind the stone walls of Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia.
Turn around and face me!
Thing is, Moundsville closed back in 1995.
Come out from behind the walls, your hands up!
It was all an exercise to test future technology.
In jail, they don't allow anybody down on the floor to have guns because there's a chance it could be taken away.
That's the thinking behind the bodyguard. For guards, police, military, it's a weapon that can't be taken away from them. The stun gun becomes a part of their body.
Well, I've actually been inventing things since I was really young.
Dave Brown invented the bodyguard initially as a way to fight off wild animals. Today, his Southern California company, Armstar, is talking to law enforcement all around the world.
We get calls from Brazil, from Korea, from Canada, from Israel.
This also doubles as a shield, so it's protective, the primal protective thing.
These less than lethal weapons are popular with law enforcement.
The trigger's in the palm, so you just squeeze.
And the bodyguard promises to be much more than just a stun gun. That laser is actually how you focus the embedded video camera. Inside that hole is a tiny 1mm HD video camera. It's transmitting right now to the guy upstairs holding a Wi-Fi enabled smartphone. Imagine what you could do with streaming video like that. You could be a cop here on the ground, transmitting your video back to headquarters. They can see not just your video, but this guy over here and this guy over here. You can have all those videos coming back. They're all GPS stamped, and they're all coming from right there.
We should have streaming video from this, should go directly to 911, kind of like a 911 call with eyes.
You can see there's plenty of space on that arm to embed a smartphone right into the device. Here at the prison riot, law enforcement got their first demo.
They like the laser a great deal. They like the flashlight.
Of the invention Dave Brown hopes will become standard issue police uniform.
We're really looking at this to be something that warns you.
A weapon of choice for future cop.
Jason Silva is here to tell us why we are all Cylons already, and why that's not a bad thing. Hey guys, Anthony here for D News. I got Jason Silva here with me, host of Shots of Awe, Brain Games, Transhumanist. Anybody who's not super familiar, what transhumanism is, can you give us like the Cliff Notes version?
Yeah, well my understanding is it's a philosophical sort of belief that we can use technology to transcend our limitations. So, you know, what it is to be human is really what it is to be transhuman. I mean, we didn't stay on the caves, we haven't stayed on the planet,
Gotcha.
Soon we won't stay with the limitations of our biology.
So we've seen a lot of huge developments lately that kind of fall into this. Just this week, there was a scientist who was creating a carbon nanotube sensor that uses a single drop of blood to diagnose just about all diseases. And the idea is eventually this is going to be in our body. And we've seen things like cochlear implants to help people hear, implants in people's brains that help them move robotic arms if they're paralyzed, everything up until like Google Glass. I think people get scared of this.
Well, people have always been afraid of new technologies. There's this whole thing about either Plato or Socrates, one of these guys that when writing was invented, the intellectual establishment of the time was like, this writing thing is going to atrophy our brains because we're not going to have to remember anything. You know, Stephen Johnson wrote an interesting book called Everything Bad is Good for Us, where he talks about how watching television and playing video games like fires up the brain, problem solving, strategy skills, all these things are enhanced by these things that supposedly rot your brain, you know, that our parents have been worried about. When the telephone was invented, people were like, what is this witchcraft? You know, like people have always been afraid.
So here's the difference though, man. Like here's the difference. We invent writing and we have a pencil and we put it on paper. The pencil breaks. It's not inside my brain.
Yeah.
One of these.
So you're worried about being dependent on these technologies where it really matters.
We worry about technology in terms of security and safety and failure, right?
Yeah.
And what happens when something like this is inside our body?
Ray Kurzweil would argue that we back up our iPhones. Currently, we don't have a backup of our mind file, and that it's much more of a liability that we don't have a backing for the biological skin bag at all. We have technology in our bodies. We have organic technology.
Sure.
The heart is a pump, you know, and we have the nervous system. It's a network, you know, like, and these technologies could fail at any time.
We at least have total control over these implants because we built them, we made them.
Well, they're only going to get better. You know, that's the thing about these technologies is that they're subject to these exponential trends, right? I mean, the supercomputer in your cell phone is, and this is, you know, I repeat this all the time because it's such an amazing number, but it is 1,000,000 times cheaper and 1,000,000 times smaller, yet 1,000 times more powerful than what used to be a half a building in size supercomputer in Stanford that was $60 million. So you have a billion-fold increase in price and performance and miniaturization. That's going to continue exponentially.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because you bring up the smartphone, and there's an argument that's going on already because people got really scared about Google Glass. People get really scared about using the internet to remember everything.
Yeah.
But we're kind of there's this theory that we're already augmented, right? Like
we
we're already
are.
cyborgs.
We already are. I mean, there's a cyborg anthropologist called Amber Case.
That's like such a great job to have.
And she has a TED Talk about this and this whole idea that we are already cyborgs. And she says, you know, every time you make a telephone call or a Skype call, you're basically creating a technosocial wormhole that is like creating a rupture in space and time so that you can communicate with another mind across like oceans and continents in real time. Kevin Kelly says, can you imagine anything more addictive than being a god? Real time. Kevin Kelly says, can you imagine anything more addictive than being a god? Real time. Kevin Kelly says, can you imagine anything more addictive than being a god? And he was like spot on. I mean, I know it sounds heretical, but basically what he's saying is that we are as gods and might as well get good at it, which is what Stuart Brand used to say too. So it's just like, you know, let's embrace this. Like, we are the cutting edge of the evolutionary paradigm, at least in the part of the universe that is observable to us at the moment. And it's our job to take control of the starship and to control our evolutionary destiny.
Let's take a look at a timeline. We're like, we've got people, we're scared right now.
Yeah.
We don't want to put this inside ourselves. But people don't even want to wear Google Glass. When do you think we get over the hump? When do you see this?
A lot faster than what you think.
Yes. When do you think we get over the hump? When do you see this?
A lot faster than what you think.
Yes. When do you think we get over the hump? When do you see this?
A lot faster than what you think.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I mean, can you today? You think anybody could imagine life without like Facebook or Twitter or even their smartphones? I mean, can you imagine life without that? I mean, these things have become sort of a part of our daily routine. Again, like our second skin. So I think that you'll be surprised how quickly it becomes normal.
You think it's going to be when Google Glass looks like regular glasses, when it's contact lenses? When do you think?
Well, these technologies, these technologies get better and they get cheaper. You know, because these technologies get better and they get cheaper. You know, because these technologies they get better and they get cheaper, you know, because one of the pushbacks that people often say is like, oh, well, these technologies, these amazing things you talk about are only going to be available for the rich. And then Kurzweil says, yeah, right, like cell phones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the cell phones get better and more people across the planet can get them. You talk about the rising billion, these people coming online for the first time, buying smartphones, doing e-commerce on their phones. This is changing economies. This is changing the world. So, I mean, these tools are used to improve humanity, and the better they get, the cheaper they get, the more accessible they get. That's the pattern that's really at play here. So I think it's inevitable. I think it's just evolution.
So there you go. All the kids will be cyborgs at the very least.
Yes.
Like 20 years from now, probably.
Yes, we are already cyborgs. We're wearing here. This is my second skin, my robotic clothing, you know, my phone in my pocket.
You have a whole channel where you just talk about stuff like this.
Yes. Shots of Awe, youtube.com/Shots of Awe is my YouTube channel where I put out these like espresso nuggets of techno rapture every week, where I try to distill these inspiring ideas and basically bottle inspiration. I tell people it's kind of like a souvenir of the ecstatic state. Right?
Subscribe to the channel, watch the show. Jason, thanks for coming by,
man. Thanks, brothers. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
First, there was the collapse of civilization, anarchy, genocide, starvation. Then when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, we got the plague. The living death, quickly closing its fist over the entire planet. And then we heard the rumors that the last scientists were working on a cure that would end the plague and restore the world. Restore it? Why? I like the death. I like the misery. I like this world! Better.
Let her go!
To Atlanta.
To cure the plague with the information that she's carrying.
I want to own it.
Own the cure?
I'd be a god.
And the misery could be stopped.
I like the misery.
The world could be changed.
I like this world.
Go to hell.
That slinger can't help you now. I'll take you to Atlanta, and you'll give me the cure. And if you don't, I'll give you the horror show. Think we're gonna swim all the way to Atlanta? I can't! Asshole! I hate the water! Hey, I caught a nice fish here!
Accessing archive. The Hydra was founded on the belief that humanity could not be trusted with its own freedom. What we did not realize was that if you try to take that freedom, they resist. The war taught us much. Humanity needed to surrender its freedom willingly.